Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take a stack of fascinating sources and, well, distill them into the most important insights for you.
That's the plan.
Today, we're plunging into a really intriguing question. How are our brains actually interacting with one of the most transformative technologies of our time?
You mean large language models, LLMs?
Exactly, yeah. Things like ChatGPT, these powerful AI programs that, generate human-like text, they've undeniably changed how many of us work and create.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to extract the key insights from a specific MIT study and some related cognitive science, really helping you understand the potential hidden costs of all this newfound convenience.
It feels like magic, right?
Wait,
But what's the real cognitive price tag?
that's it. This MIT study, Your Brain on ChatGPT, Cognitive Debt and Human Intellect, it really challenges some core assumptions. Might just change how you think about using AI.
It's definitely thought-provoking stuff.
Okay, let's unpack this. The excitement around AI, it's completely justified, isn't it? It just melts away friction. I mean, you type a single prompt into ChatGPT, and bang, you have a page of polished prose that might have cost you a whole afternoon of, struggle.
The speed is incredible. Companies are chasing savings. Headlines love the speed.
And honestly, these tools, they've become incredibly indispensable. Just yesterday, I was trying to draft this complex email, and my first instinct, open ChatGPT.
Yep. It's becoming reflexive.
It really makes you think about how quickly we adapt.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And what's truly fascinating here, what makes these LLMs fundamentally different from, say, calculators or even image generators, isn't just the output.
What is then?
It's their scope. They don't just crunch numbers or paint pixels. They try to parse your intent, assemble arguments, deliver coherent, polished prose.
Right. It's much broader.
Exactly. That broad reach, it sparks a completely new kind of cognitive offloading. The question isn't if we use this power.
We obviously are.
Right. It's how often, how deeply, and crucially, at what mental cost.
That's a crucial distinction because the convenience is, well, it's undeniable, right? Drafting emails, summarizing research, brainstorming, they just slot right into daily tasks.
Seamlessly.
But if we're constantly offloading, what are the subtle ways this might actually be changing how we think? Beyond just speed.
That's precisely what the MIT study aimed to uncover.
Okay, so how did they do it? How did the MIT team actually get Your Brain on ChatGPT under the microscope, so to speak?
Well, they brought 54 college students into a lab.
Okay.
And they were all wired up for electroencephalography, EEG, basically measuring brainwaves.
Right, tracking brain activity.
Exactly. And these students were assigned one of 3 distinct writing workflows. First, just raw brain power, nothing else.
Old school.
Yep. Second, classic web search plus their brain.
The way many of us worked before LLMs, maybe?
Probably. And third, GPT-4 on demand. That's OpenAI's latest big model designed for, super fast natural text.
Got it. 3 different approaches.
Right. And the study's unique approach was particularly insightful. Participants wrote essays in 3 initial rounds. Then, and this is the clever bit, in a surprise 4th session, they swapped workflows.
Ah, so they could compare within individuals, too.
Precisely. It allowed the researchers to trace EEG connectivity, effectively capturing a second-by-second movie of AI and cognition in action.
Wow.
And alongside that neural data, they meticulously scored the essays. They looked at things like quoting accuracy, memory recall 24 hours later.
Okay, how well they remembered what they wrote.
Yeah. Lexical diversity, basically, richness of vocabulary, and even how much ownership the students felt over their own work.
That's interesting, ownership.
It really is. So you get this rare, powerful blend, neural signals, linguistic analysis, and self-report interviews. A really comprehensive picture.
So after all that careful observation, what did the MIT team actually see? I mean, in the data, I'm really curious about those numbers from their fast look chart. Were they as stark as you might expect?
They were, frankly, quite stark, especially comparing the groups. Get this. First session, the LLM group, using GPT-4o. Correct quotation accuracy. 0%.
0. Really? None.
0. Compare that to nearly 90%, 88.9% to be exact, for those using web search or just their brain.
That's not just a drop. That's, a cliff dive, like you said.
Exactly. And when it came to claiming ownership of the work,
Yeah.
LLM group, only 50%. Barely half felt it was truly theirs. The brain-only group, 89%, much higher.
Makes sense, if you didn't really write it.
Right. Memory recall after 24 hours. Consistently low for the LLM group, high for the other 2. And lexical diversity, the vocabulary richness.
Let me guess. Lowest for the LLM group.
You got it. Consistently the lowest.
Wow, those numbers paint a very, very clear picture. It really sounds like when the language model does most of the composing, the writer's brain just...
Well, it coasts. Precisely. Connectivity drops, memory fades, and that crucial self-identification, that ownership of the text, it fractures.
Yeah.
This is the tangible footprint of over-reliance on AI.
Okay. And what about the brain waves themselves? What do the electrodes show?
Yeah, that elaborates on this. Alpha and theta activity, these are linked to focused attention and working memory. They just plummeted when GPT-4s took the wheel.
So less focus, less active memory use.
Exactly. Beta activity, which is related to executive control like planning and decision-making, it followed suit. Dropped too. Even delta waves, a marker for distributed integration of information across brain regions, they shrank.
So in plain English, the brain basically downshifted.
That's a great way to put it. It downshifted. Think of it like this. AI acts as the driver, and your cortex, well, it monitors the road far less intently.
That analogy of the brain downshifting is really powerful. So if AI is the driver and our cortex is monitoring less, does that mean we're actually losing the capacity for that focus and control over time? Or just the habit of using it?
Well, the study suggests it's a bit of both, maybe. But primarily, it's a reduction in the engagement of those circuits.
Okay.
Which, over time, if they're not challenged, could lead to a weakening of the capacity itself. It needs exercise, like a muscle. And it's fascinating, isn't it, that the search engine group occupied a kind of middle lane in all this.
Yeah, why was that?
Because clicking through sources, evaluating them, it still required goal-directed scanning, some active effort.
So it kept their neural hubs partly engaged. They weren't just passively receiving.
Exactly. They still had to do some work.
So if I'm understanding correctly, then the real danger isn't technology itself. It's how thoroughly it replaces that genuine cognitive struggle, that friction that's necessary for learning and memory.
Exactly right. And this brings us neatly to the concept of cognitive debt.
Cognitive debt. Okay, explain that.
You can think of it like interest accruing on unexercised circuits in your brain.
Okay. Like financial debt, but for your thinking.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Each time you let ChatGPT, say, draft your paragraphs, you get that immediate productivity boost, sure.
Right, the instant gratification.
But you're actually deferring the cost. The cost of mental rehearsal, of embedding that information. Your memory traces weaken critical thinking pathways idle. And pretty soon, it feels much harder to write or think cold without the AI crutch.
And the MIT study actually observed this debt compounding over just 3 sessions. That seems fast.
It is quite concerning, yeah. Just 3 sessions showed a measurable effect.
And if that's what happened in just 3 sessions in a lab, imagine over a full semester for a student. Or, years in a professional career.
Exactly. The impact is potentially much broader than just writing essays. Language weaves through everything.
Right.
So if AI and our own cognition drift apart, the ripple effect could touch law, medicine, engineering, journalism. Really any field where reasoning has to stand on its own, especially when facing new problems.
It truly could subtly affect your own skills over time without you even realizing it. It's a bit like outsourcing your bicep curls, isn't it? You get the weight lifted, maybe, but the muscle doesn't grow.
That's a perfect analogy. And classrooms, well, they offer a particularly clear view of this potential negative impact on students. We saw the quoting accuracy collapse, right?
Yeah.
From nearly perfect to 0, when essays were basically birthed by GPT-4o.
Yeah, that was stunning.
Students literally couldn't recite their own words minutes later because those words just never passed through their long-term memory circuits. They hadn't done the work.
And they felt less ownership, too, you said. That must hit motivation.
Absolutely. It undercuts intrinsic motivation. Why care deeply if it doesn't feel like yours?
I can absolutely see how that would happen. And I guess over semesters, that gap compounds into weaker study habits, maybe shaky conceptual foundations.
It seems likely. And when you add the potential for grade inflation because the AI polish makes the writing look good.
Right. It looks fluent even if the understanding isn't there.
Exactly. You get this dangerous feedback loop where learners might believe they're performing better even as their underlying skills are, well, eroding. Teachers might see surface coherence and miss the missing comprehension underneath. This raises a really important question, doesn't it, about how the sheer fluency of generative models can clash with critical thinking.
Which needs friction.
Precisely. Critical thinking demands friction, doubt, revision, struggle. The neural proof is there in the study. Lower beta connectivity signifies less executive system involvement. Less planning, less evaluation. Critical reasoning is actually shrinking in those moments.
That has huge practical implications, doesn't it, for how we engage in discussions, debates, even ethical reflection if those critical reasoning skills are getting less exercise. So, is there any hope? I mean, is the brain totally out of the loop once AI enters the picture?
Not at all. That's the interesting part. Friction isn't gone forever. Remember that surprise fourth session?
Yeah, where they swapped workflows.
So students who switched from using only their brain to using GPT-4o actually saw a spike in connectivity initially.
Really? Why?
It suggests their minds were still wrestling with how to integrate the AI output, how to fit it into their existing mental structures. It wasn't passive acceptance, at least not immediately.
Ah, so the brain was still working to make sense of it.
Exactly. The cue is clear. Alternating modes, switching between using AI and not, can preserve that challenge while still letting us, harvest the speed benefits when needed. It's about active engagement, not total avoidance.
Okay, that's a huge relief, actually. It's not an all-or-nothing thing.
Not necessarily.
Now, speaking of costs, brain power isn't the only meter running, is it? This idea of cognitive debt, that invisible cost isn't the only hidden price tag. This study also touched on a more tangible one, environmental costs.
Oh, yes, the energy consumption.
Right. Each time you ping GPT, it's burning roughly 10 times the energy of a simple search query, something like 0.3 watt-hours versus 0.03.
That's correct. Those are the approximate figures cited. And while it sounds tiny, poo query.
You multiply by millions, billions of queries worldwide.
Exactly. And what looks trivial on one desk suddenly becomes a significant hidden environmental toll. Cognitive debt, it seems, kind of meets carbon debt.
That's a sobering thought. And psychologically, you use the term cognitive offloading. How is it different with LLMs compared to, say, using a calculator or a calendar?
Well, psychologists use that term for shifting mental tasks onto external aids generally. But LLMs are different because they don't just store information like a note app or calculate it like a calculator. They generate it.
They create the content.
Right. And this potentially shifts the classic model. Instead of freeing up your mental capacity for higher level reasoning, the AI could, in some cases, actually eclipse reasoning entirely, as the study puts it.
Eclipse reasoning entirely. Wow. So how does that manifest for someone who's, say, a knowledge worker? I'm picturing like a programmer who stops remembering basic syntax because the AI auto-completes everything.
It's a perfect example.
Or maybe a consultant who outsources the rhetorical muscle for every presentation.
It's exactly that kind of scenario. The interview snippets from the study are quite revealing. Participants talked about feeling partial agency, even a kind of learned helplessness. They disliked the effort of writing good prompts. They often distrusted the factual accuracy of the output, but they were hooked by the sheer convenience. It saved them effort, even if they didn't fully trust it or feel good about it.
That sounds like a tricky spot to be in.
Very. And the danger pattern seems similar across fields. The coder leaning on AI for boilerplate might forget syntax quirks. The consultant outsourcing slide decks might lose that persuasive edge, that rhetorical muscle. And the research lines up with anecdotes, too. People report feeling mentally foggy, kind of unsatisfied after marathon prompting sessions.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So sustainable careers, it seems, will depend on using AI to augment expertise, not anesthetize it. Otherwise, you risk becoming less of a creator and more of a project manager for a tool you barely understand.
Okay, so this isn't about shunning AI entirely. That ship has sailed, probably. It's about being mindful, being intentional. So what can we do, practically, to keep our brains in the loop? Let's shift to that practical playbook, the stuff distilled from the study and learning science.
Great question. And yes, there are strategies. The study suggests several hybrid workflow tactics to counteract this cognitive debt.
Okay, like what?
First, always try to cold start every project by hand. Outline, mind map, brainstorm without assistance first, then invite AI for expansion or refinement.
Get your own thoughts down first.
Exactly. Second, use search as a bridge tool. Remember that middle ground neural profile.
Right. It kept the brain more active than just using the LLM.
Yep. Search supplies material but still demands evaluation from you. Third, switch modalities often. Maybe voice note your ideas, sketch them out, type a rough draft, then query the AI. Varied input keeps memory networks wider.
Okay, mix it up.
Fourth, demand citations for any facts the AI provides. Mark them, check them yourself. Reintroduce that evaluation step.
Don't just trust it blindly.
Absolutely not. Fifth, archive your drafts. Compare your human version side by side with the AI-assisted one. That reflection helps cement learning.
You see the differences.
Yeah. And finally, maybe consider scheduling manual Mondays or something similar. 1 day a week, disable your AI assistants. Force those circuits to fire on their own.
A digital detox for your brain. Might be tough for some of us, but I see the point. That discomfort you feel, as you said, is actually a signal your circuits are firing, right?
Exactly. That feeling of effort is the learning. So these tactics, they're ways to convert over-reliance into selective mindful leverage.
Makes sense. And what about educators? They're on the front lines of this.
Yeah, they have specific strategies too. They can reframe plagiarism, maybe require annotated reflections, where students explain why they kept or changed each AI suggestion.
Focus on the thinking process.
Right, grade the process, not just the final output. Look at logs, outlines, revision notes to see genuine effort. They could run spaced abstinence, have AI-free assignments periodically to train retrieval strength,
Build that mental muscle back up.
and crucially, teach prompt deconstruction. Help students critique the AI's output, understand its limitations, its biases, turn generative AI and critical thinking into powerful partners, not adversaries.
So looking ahead then, the study obviously leaves some fascinating questions open, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely.
The MIT sample, you said, skewed young, academically strong. How do maybe more mature professionals react over months, years of using these tools? Does writing in a second language change the cognitive debt calculation?
Good questions. And could something like fMRI, which gives more spatial detail than EEG, pinpoint which specific brain regions fade fastest with over-reliance? These are puzzles the study hints at, but couldn't fully solve.
Yeah.
And broadening out, this research also points towards a really tantalizing frontier, real-time biofeedback.
What do you mean, like wearable tech?
Potentially. Imagine your writing environment, maybe your screen, flashing a subtle nudge when your frontal beta activity, that executive control signal, drops too low.
Signaling you're relying too much on the AI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Signaling that the language model is doing too much heavy lifting and you're doing too little. Adaptive user interfaces could, perhaps, preserve cognitive engagement while still shaving off the tedious busy work, creating a true symbiosis.
That's a fascinating, if slightly futuristic possibility. So, wrapping up, at its core, AI is undeniably a powerful miracle, isn't it? But these MIT findings, they really prove it's not free.
Not cognitively free, no.
Each unattended prompt, it seems, drives this tiny micro wedge between the AI's output and our own cognition. And if that's left unmanaged, our mental muscles, they can genuinely soften.
It's true. And knowledge work has always evolved, right? Spreadsheets replace ledgers, but accountants still need to understand numbers. IDEs replace raw terminals, but programmers still need to understand logic.
The tools changed, but the core thinking remained essential.
Exactly. In each case, the craft survived, even thrived, because practitioners kept thinking one step deeper than the tool. The potential worry with LLMs is they threaten to erase even that last step because they operate on language, the very medium of thought itself.
So the tool gets dangerously close to the thinking itself.
It can, yeah. So the defense, paradoxically, is more thinking. Deliberate, reflective, often slower sinking. So keep experimenting, keep prompting. Sure, these tools are powerful, but also keep wrestling with blank pages sometimes.
Don't lose that skill.
Train yourself to spot when the prose feels just a bit too easy, too friction-free. That little prickle of unease, that might be your prefrontal cortex asking for its turn.
Listen to that feeling.
Yeah. Answer that call often enough, and you'll navigate this new era fluent in both silicon speed and human depth. The future, I think, belongs to people who can hold that tension using AI and cognition together, yes, but never letting the machine write the final crucial sentence.
A powerful thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this is giving you plenty to think about as you continue to navigate the exciting and sometimes challenging world of AI.